Chapter 1. The Melody That Stole Her Heart, 2022. Elise, perched on the rickety balcony overlooking the Seine, felt the Parisian night air whip around her auburn curls. Below, the city twinkled like a spilled jewel box, the distant hum of traffic a constant lullaby. Tonight, however, the symphony of the city was drowned out by the passionate strains of a cello emanating from the open window of the apartment across the street. She'd been drawn to the music for weeks. Each evening, a melody of raw emotion would spill out, weaving tales of love, loss, and longing that resonated deep within her soul. Curiosity tugged at her, but the musician remained a mystery, a phantom serenading the Parisian night. Tonight, however, something felt different. The music, a poignant Chopin nocturne, held a vulnerability that sent shivers down her spine. As the final note faded, a heavy sigh drifted across the water. On impulse, Elise leaned over the railing, her voice barely a whisper.
"That was beautiful,"
she called out. Silence. Then, a shadow flickered within the window. A moment later, a man appeared, his dark hair framing a face both handsome and troubled.
"Thank you,"
he replied, his voice a low rumble that sent a blush creeping up her neck.
"I didn't expect an audience."
The encounter was brief, a stolen moment across the Parisian rooftops, but in that exchange, a spark ignited. Elise, a budding writer with a heart full of stories, felt a connection unlike anything she'd ever known. The melody that stole her heart wasn't just music. It was the promise of something more, something waiting to be written in the symphony of their lives. Chapter 2. Stolen Glances in a Crowded Room. Days turned into weeks, and the melody across the street became Elise's muse. She devoured biographies of Chopin, haunted record stores for obscure recordings, and poured her newfound passion into her writing. The mystery musician remained a constant presence, a silent collaborator on her creative journey. One Thursday night, a flyer plastered on a boulangerie window caught her eye. A lone cellist, advertised as the Parisian Phantom, was performing at a small jazz club in the Latin Quarter. Her heart hammered a frantic rhythm against her ribs. Could it be him? The club was a haven for smoky back alleys and whispered secrets. Elise squeezed through the throng of bodies, the air thick with the smell of spilled wine and nervous anticipation. Finally, she found a spot near the back, the stage bathed in a warm amber glow. Then he appeared. Adrian, the man from across the street, his face sharper in the dim light, his eyes holding a depth that sent butterflies fluttering in her stomach. As he raised his cello, the room fell silent. His music was a story in itself. His fingers danced across the strings, weaving tales of stolen glances and yearning desires. Elise felt his gaze meet hers across the crowded room, a silent conversation unfolding. He poured his heart into the music, and in that moment, she knew. He wasn't just playing for the crowd. He was playing for her. The last note echoed, leaving an ache in the silence. As the applause erupted, Adrian locked eyes with her once more, a ghost of a smile playing on his lips. He disappeared backstage, and a restless energy pulsed through Elise. She couldn't leave, not without talking to him. Weaving through the crowd, she reached the back in trance, a bead of sweat trickling down her neck. Just as she was about to give up, the door swung open. There he stood, his face flushed, the cello case propped against his hip.
"You,"
he breathed, surprise giving way to a hesitant smile.
"It was you the other night."
Chapter 3. Whispers Under the Parisian Stars. The smoky air of the jazz club seemed to linger around them as Elise and Adrian stood awkwardly in the doorway. The Parisian night, a stark contrast to the dimly lit club, beckoned.
"Can I buy you a drink?"
Adrian finally asked, his voice a low murmur. Hesitation flickered across Elise's face. This wasn't supposed to happen, not like this. But the allure of the unknown, the thrill of a connection blossoming from stolen moments, proved too strong to resist.
"Sure,"
she replied, a hint of a smile tugging at her lips. They walked along the Seine, the rhythm of their steps echoing in the quiet night. The city, usually a boisterous symphony of honking horns and late-night laughter, had retreated, leaving them alone with the sound of their own breathing and the distant hum of the river. Adrian stopped at a small bridge, its wrought iron railings adorned with countless love locks. Leaning against the railing, he looked out at the city sprawled beneath them, the Eiffel Tower twinkling like a distant beacon.
I didn't expect anyone to hear me play,
he admitted, his voice laced with a vulnerability that surprised Elise.
Not after all this time.
Your music.
She started, then hesitated, searching for the right words.
It's like it speaks a language I never knew existed.
He turned to face her, a flicker of something deep in his eyes.
Maybe that's because it's telling a story I've been afraid to say out loud.
Intrigue ignited within Elise. This wasn't just a musician lost in his music. There was a hidden depth to Adrian, a story begging to be unearthed. The moon, a silver coin in the velvet sky, bathed them in a soft glow. As they talked, the hours melted away. He spoke of his passion for music, of his dreams of sharing his melodies with the world, and a shadow he kept hidden just beneath the surface. Elise, in turn, shared her love for words, the way they could weave stories and paint 1,000 pictures. A comfortable silence settled between them, a silence filled with unspoken words and unspoken desires. As they stood there, bathed in moonlight and the soft hum of the city, Elise knew this was more than a passing encounter. This was the beginning of something extraordinary, a melody waiting to be composed with two hearts playing in perfect harmony. Suddenly, a sharp tug at her sleeve tore her gaze from the moonlit city. It was Colette, her landlady, a woman with a permanent frown etched on her face.
Elise, what are you doing out so late?
She scolded, her voice like nails on a chalkboard.
It's past midnight.
Elise flushed, caught between lingering with Adrian and facing Colette's wrath.
I was just taking a walk.
She stammered. With a final lingering look at Adrian, Elise said goodbye, promising herself she wouldn't let this connection fade into the Parisian night. Chapter 4. Fortunes and Forbidden Love. The scolding from Colette echoed in Elise's ears as she climbed the creaky stairs to her tiny Parisian apartment. Sleep, however, was a distant dream. Adrian's music, his vulnerability, the intensity of their conversation, it all swirled in her mind like a whirlwind. The next morning, driven by a relentless curiosity, Elise delved into the internet. Armed with Adrian's name and the nickname, the Parisian Phantom, she scoured websites and music forums. Hours ticked by, frustration mounting with each dead end. Finally, a single article, tucked away in a dusty corner of a local music blog, offered a glimmer of information. Adrian Thorne, the article revealed, was the son of Alexander Thorne, a renowned businessman and socialite. The article went on to describe a bitter family feud that had estranged Adrian from his inheritance and his place in Parisian high society. Adrian, it seemed, had chosen the unyielding melody of his cello over the gilded cage of his family's fortune. Elise's heart sank. Their connection, blossoming in the smoky haze of a jazz club, suddenly felt fraught with complications. Could a budding writer from a humble Parisian apartment ever bridge the chasm that separated her from Adrian's world? Days turned into weeks, and despite the nagging doubts, Elise couldn't stop thinking about him. Every night, she found herself drawn to the balcony, hoping for a glimpse of him, for the melody that had become the soundtrack to her newfound yearning. One evening, as the first stars began to pepper the twilight sky, a figure appeared on the balcony across the street. Adrian, a faint smile playing on his lips, raised his cello in greeting. Relief washed over Elise, warm and sweet. The melody that night held a different timbre, a whisper of defiance, a promise that their connection, however unlikely, was worth fighting for. The weight of his family legacy might loom large, but Adrian's eyes, as they met hers across the rooftops, held a quiet determination. They were two souls drawn together by a shared passion, and Elise knew, with a certainty that defied logic, that their love was a melody worth composing together, no matter the obstacles that lay ahead. Chapter 5. The Weight of a Family Legacy. The following days were a whirlwind of stolen glances across the street and late-night conversations under the Parisian sky. Adrian, emboldened by their connection, confided in Elise about the stifling expectations of his family. His father, a man obsessed with power and prestige, had viewed music as a frivolous pursuit, a far cry from the ruthless world of business he envisioned for his son. Elise listened intently, her heart aching for him. She understood the weight of family legacy, the burden of expectations that could suffocate dreams and aspirations. But unlike Adrian, she didn't have a fortune to walk away from, only her own determination and a heart full of stories waiting to be told. One afternoon, while sipping coffee at a quaint cafe, Adrian received a call. His face paled as he listened, his hand tightening around the phone. When he hung up, a storm brewed in his eyes.
My father.
He said, his voice tight.
He knows about the performances. He's furious.
A shiver ran down Elise's spine. The consequences of Adrian's defiance were becoming painfully clear. His father, it seemed, wasn't content with simply disapproving. He was actively trying to sabotage his son's passion. Over the next few days, the melody across the street fell silent. The once vibrant balcony remained empty, a physical manifestation of the invisible wall that Adrian's father was building between them. Fear not, Elise. Was this the end? Was their fragile connection destined to be crushed by the weight of a family legacy? Unable to bear the silence, she decided to take a chance. Late one evening, armed with a bouquet of lilies, Adrian's favorite, as he had once confided, she stood across the street, gazing up at his apartment. With a deep breath, she climbed onto a nearby window ledge, hoping to catch his eye. It seemed like an eternity before a light flickered on in his room. A moment later, Adrian appeared at the window, his face etched with surprise and then, slowly, relief. The sight of him rekindled a spark of hope within Elise.
Elise.
He breathed, his voice thick with emotion.
What are you doing?
I can't let you disappear like this.
She called back, her voice trembling slightly.
Your music, it matters. Not just to me, but to anyone who hears it.
A tear glistened in Adrian's eye, reflecting the moonlight. A decision flickered across his face, a defiance that mirrored the fire in her own heart. He gestured towards the fire escape, a silent invitation. With a nervous smile, Elise clambered up the rickety metal stairs, her heart pounding in her chest. Reaching the balcony, she found Adrian waiting, his arms outstretched. As they embraced, the weight of the world seemed to melt away. In that moment, under the Parisian sky, they weren't just a writer and a musician, but two souls united by a love that refused to be silenced. The fight for their future had just begun, but together, they were ready to face the melody, however discordant it might become. Chapter 6. Across the Ocean, A Love Lost. The stolen moments on the fire escape balcony became a lifeline for Elise and Adrian. They poured their hearts out, sharing dreams and fears under the cloak of Parisian nights. Adrian, fueled by Elise's unwavering support, defied his father by booking a small performance at a renowned music venue. News of the rebellion, however, didn't sit well with Alexander Thorne. He used his considerable influence to sabotage the performance, ensuring minimal publicity and a sparse audience. The night of the concert arrived, shrouded in a suffocating sense of foreboding. The venue, usually bustling, was half empty, a harsh reflection of Alexander's ruthless tactics. Despite the despair in the air, Adrian played. His music, infused with a raw emotion born from defiance and love, resonated with the small audience. Tears welled up in Elise's eyes as she watched him pour his heart into every note. His music wasn't just a performance. It was a declaration of his passion, a plea for a life he wouldn't trade for any fortune. But even as the last note faded, a sense of unease lingered. Later that night, Adrian received a call. His voice, strained and pale, told the story. His father, in a final act of cruelty, had used his connections to get him fired from the orchestra he dreamt of playing with since he was a child. The news hit Adrian like a physical blow. The weight of his family legacy, once a distant threat, now felt like a crushing hand around his throat. He looked at Elise, his eyes filled with despair and a flicker of something else, a fear of losing her.
I can't stay here anymore. I can't stay here anymore.
He whispered, his voice hoarse.
He'll never let me be happy as long as I'm under his control.
Elise's heart ached for him. The future, once filled with promise, stretched before them like an uncertain path. But as she looked into his eyes, filled with a love that mirrored her own, she knew she couldn't let him face this alone.
Then we leave.
She declared, her voice firm.
Together. There's a whole world out there, and somewhere, there's a place for your music to be heard.
Adrian's face flickered with surprise, then a slow smile spread across his lips. In that moment, they made a pact. A pact not just to fight for their love, but for Adrian's dreams. The road ahead was unknown, but they were ready to face it together. A melody of hope and defiance carried across the ocean. Chapter 7. A Symphony of Longing. Leaving Paris was a bittersweet symphony. The city that had witnessed the blossoming of their love now became a painful reminder of what they were leaving behind. With a single suitcase each and a heart full of uncertainty, Elise and Adrian boarded a plane bound for New York City, the city of dreams and second chances. The first few months were a struggle. New York, a vibrant tapestry of cultures and ambitions, was a stark contrast to the familiar charm of Paris. Finding an apartment was a challenge, and even with Elise's freelance writing gigs and Adrian's tireless search for work, money was tight. Yet, amidst the difficulties, their love remained a constant melody. They found solace in their shared dreams, in the quiet moments spent writing and composing together. Elise poured her experiences into her writing, crafting stories of love and resilience that resonated with readers on a deeper level. Adrian, drawing inspiration from their journey, started composing a new piece, a symphony that captured the bittersweet longing for a home left behind and the fervent hope for a future yet unwritten. One evening, as they sat huddled in their tiny apartment, the sound of a violin drifted through the thin walls. Intrigued, they followed the melody to the apartment next door. Behind the slightly open door, a young woman with fiery red hair was passionately playing her violin. Timidly, Elise knocked. The music stopped abruptly, and the woman opened the door, a surprised look on her face. After a brief introduction, they learned her name was Clara, a struggling musician chasing her own dreams in the Big Apple. An instant connection sparked. Clara, with her infectious enthusiasm and unyielding belief in their talent, became a beacon of light in their uncertain journey. She helped them navigate the complexities of the New York music scene, introducing them to small venues and underground music circles. Gradually, Adrian's music began to find an audience. His soulful melodies, infused with the raw emotion of their struggles and the unwavering hope for a brighter future, resonated with a diverse crowd. Elise's writing, published in online magazines and local publications, garnered attention for its poignant prose and relatable characters. One chilly November evening, they received a call that changed everything. A renowned music producer, captivated by Adrian's symphony, A Symphony of Longing, offered him a recording deal. Tears welled up in Elise's eyes as she watched Adrian, a mixture of disbelief and joy clouding his face. Their journey had been far from easy. It was a symphony played on the strings of hardship, resilience, and unwavering love. But in that moment, they knew it had all been worth it. The melody of their dreams, once a distant whisper, was now building to a crescendo, ready to be heard by the world. Chapter 8. The Power of a Forgotten Note. The recording studio buzzed with nervous energy. Adrian, his fingers hovering over the strings of his cello, stole a glance at Elise across the room. Her bright eyes held a mix of pride and excitement, a reflection of the journey they had taken together. The producer, a seasoned man with a discerning ear, sat behind a mixing console, a hint of a smile playing on his lips. He had taken a chance on Adrian's unique style, a blend of classical elegance and raw emotion. Today was the day they would finally capture the magic of A Symphony of Longing on tape. The first note resonated, filling the studio with a poignant melody. Adrian poured his heart and soul into his music, weaving tales of loss, longing, and ultimately, the triumphant power of love. As the last note faded, a stunned silence hung in the air. The producer broke the spell with an enthusiastic clap.
That was incredible.
He exclaimed, his voice filled with genuine admiration.
You captured something truly special here, Adrian.
Relief washed over Adrian, followed by a surge of gratitude. He looked at Elise, her eyes shining with tears. He knew, without a doubt, that none of it would have been possible without her unwavering support. The recording sessions progressed smoothly, fueled by Adrian's newfound passion and the producer's meticulous guidance. Weeks later, as they held the finished album in their hands, a sense of accomplishment washed over them. A symphony of longing was more than just music. It was a testament to their love story. Each note carried a memory, the stolen glances across Parisian rooftops, the quiet moments writing in their cramped apartment, the unwavering belief they had in each other despite the odds. The album launch was a resounding success. Critics praised Adrian's innovative style and raw emotion, and audiences connected deeply with the story his music told. Soon, Adrian was no longer the Parisian phantom. He was Adrian Thorne, a rising star in the world of classical music. One afternoon, while cleaning out their old Parisian apartment, a bittersweet goodbye before their move to a more spacious one, Elise stumbled upon a forgotten note tucked away beneath a loose floorboard. It was a love letter, written in flowing script, addressed to someone named Alexander. A thrill shot through her. Could it be? As she read the letter, a long-forgotten story unfolded. It was from Alexander's late wife, a woman passionate about music who had begged him to let their son follow his dreams. Tears welled up in Elise's eyes. This forgotten note wasn't just a piece of paper. It held the key to understanding Alexander's bitterness and the source of his conflict with Adrian. Armed with this newfound knowledge, Elise knew they had to reach out to him. With Adrian's blessing, she wrote a letter of her own, sharing their story and the love letter she had found. It was a gamble, but they had to try. The response arrived weeks later, a single word scrawled on a worn postcard: "Meet me in Paris." Chapter 9. A Race Against Time. The weight of the postcard felt heavy in Elise's hand as she boarded the plane to Paris. Adrian, his face etched with a mix of apprehension and hope, sat beside her. Their successful launch of A Symphony of Longing had propelled them into a whirlwind of interviews, performances, and a growing fan base. Yet, the looming meeting with Alexander cast a long shadow over their newfound fame. The Parisian streets, usually bustling with life, seemed to hold their breath as they arrived at the familiar cafe where they'd first planned to meet Alexander. He wasn't there. Minutes turned into an agonizing hour, with each passing moment amplifying their anxieties. Just as Elise was about to call it quits, a man with a head full of silver hair, his face etched with the lines of a life well lived, entered the cafe. His eyes scanned the room, landing on them. It was Alexander Thorne. The reunion was tense. Years of resentment and misunderstanding hung heavy in the air. Elise, however, broke the ice, offering him the worn postcard with his late wife's letter. As he read it, his eyes welled up with a lifetime's worth of regret.
She always believed in music.
He whispered, his voice thick with emotion.
She would be so proud of you, Adrian.
A long silence followed, filled with unspoken apologies and a tentative reconciliation. Alexander spoke of his own lost dreams, of the pressures that had forced him to bury them, and the guilt that had festered in his heart for years. As he spoke, a piece of the puzzle fit into place. Alexander wasn't the villain they had painted him to be. He was a man trapped in his own cage, burdened by the weight of expectations and a past he could never rewrite. Suddenly, Adrian's phone buzzed. It was Clara, her voice frantic. News had broken that a renowned music hall in Paris was being threatened with closure due to lack of funds. A fundraising concert was being planned to save it, but they needed a headliner, and fast. A race against time began. Adrian, fueled by a newfound passion and a desire to mend bridges, proposed a collaboration. He would headline the concert, performing A Symphony of Longing with a full orchestra. It was a risky move, a chance to not only save the music hall, but also offer a public olive branch to his father and the city that had witnessed his struggles. Time blurred into a whirlwind of rehearsals and frantic phone calls. Alexander, humbled and eager to atone for his past, used his influence to secure additional funding for the concert. Finally, the night arrived, and a palpable energy crackled in the air. The concert hall was packed to the rafters, a sea of eager faces. As the first note of a symphony of longing resonated through the hall, a hush fell over the audience. Adrian poured his heart into the performance, his emotions amplified by the presence of his father in the front row. When the final note faded, the hall erupted in thunderous applause. Tears streamed down Elise's face as she watched Adrian take a bow, a newfound understanding reflected in his eyes. This wasn't just a concert. It was a culmination of their journey, a testament to the power of love, forgiveness, and the music that had brought them all together. Later that night, as they stood outside the music hall, the Parisian sky shimmering with stars, Alexander placed a hand on Adrian's shoulder, a silent gesture of acceptance.
"You found your melody, son,"
he said, his voice thick with emotion.
"Don't ever let anyone silence it again."
Adrian smiled, a tear rolling down his cheek. He looked at Elise, her hand intertwined with his, and whispered,
"We did it. Together."
Their journey had been a symphony of hardship and hope, a song of stolen glances and defiant melodies. It was a love story that defied societal expectations and family legacies, proving that sometimes the most beautiful music is created amidst the most unexpected harmonies. Chapter 10. The Grand Reveal and a Choice. The Parisian air buzzed with a newfound energy for Elise and Adrian. The success of the fundraising concert, the reconciliation with Alexander, and the rising popularity of a symphony of longing created a melody of triumph that resonated through their lives. However, a new note, a discordant one, crept into their otherwise harmonious symphony. An invitation arrived, a gilded card embossed with the prestigious logo of the Vienna Philharmonic Orchestra. They were offering Adrian a guest soloist position for their upcoming season, a dream opportunity for any aspiring cellist. Excitement battled with trepidation within Elise. Vienna, the city of waltzes and musical giants, held an undeniable allure. But the thought of leaving Paris, the city that had witnessed their struggles and their triumphs, filled her with a pang of sadness. Days turned into a whirlwind of discussions, late-night brainstorming sessions fueled by strong coffee and even stronger emotions. Adrian, his face etched with a mixture of ambition and concern, paced their apartment, his cello case resting silent against the wall.
Vienna is everything you've ever dreamed of, Adrian.
Elise said, her voice laced with bittersweet honesty.
This is a once-in-a-lifetime chance.
Adrian stopped pacing, his eyes meeting hers.
"But my dream isn't complete without you,"
he replied, his voice a low rumble that sent shivers down her spine. He spoke of his desire to share his music with the world, but also of his need to have her by his side, his muse, his anchor in the ever-churning sea of fame. A difficult choice lay before them. Vienna offered a prestigious platform, a chance for Adrian to solidify his career. But Paris held their shared history, their humble beginnings, and the city that had nurtured their love. One afternoon, amidst the chaos of packing and emotional discussions, Elise stumbled upon a dusty box tucked away in a corner of the closet. Inside, nestled amongst old photographs and travel brochures, was a worn journal. It was hers, filled with stories scribbled in her youthful hand, tales born in the cafes and hidden corners of Paris. As she flipped through the pages, a forgotten dream flickered to life. Elise, before being swept away by the melody of Adrian's music, had dreamt of seeing her stories published, of sharing her voice with the world. Seeing the journal reignited a spark within her. She realized that while Adrian's dream lay in Vienna, her own path might lead in a different direction. That night, under the familiar twinkle of the Parisian sky, they sat on their fire escape balcony, a place that held countless memories. Adrian, his brow furrowed with worry, waited for her decision. Elise took a deep breath, her heart pounding in her chest.
Vienna is your dream, Adrian.
She said, her voice firm but filled with love.
Go and conquer it. But know that a part of me will always remain here, in this city that holds our story.
For a moment, his face clouded with disappointment. Then, a slow smile spread across his lips, a smile filled with understanding and a deeper sense of connection.
We'll find a way.
He whispered, pulling her close.
Our melody isn't confined by a city or a stage. It's a symphony we'll write together, no matter where the world takes us.
Their decision was made. Adrian would accept the Vienna offer, and Elise would stay in Paris, pursuing her own literary dreams. It was a bold choice, a leap of faith, but it felt right. Their love story, as complex and ever-evolving as a symphony itself, wouldn't be silenced by distance. They would bridge the gap, composing new chapters in their melody, their hearts forever connected across the miles. Chapter 11. A Love Song for Two Hearts. The farewell at the train station was a bittersweet symphony. Tears welled up in Elise's eyes as she watched Adrian disappear into the sleek Vienna-bound train, his cello case clutched tightly in his hand. A wave of loneliness washed over her, but it was quickly replaced by a surge of determination. It was time to focus on her own melody. With renewed energy, Elise delved into her writing. Parisian cafes became her new writing studios, the city's vibrant energy weaving itself into the fabric of her stories. Nights were spent hunched over her laptop, fueled by strong coffee and the distant echo of Adrian's music, which she still listened to religiously. Weeks turned into months. The silence between them, once deafening, was gradually filled with emails and late-night phone calls. Adrian recounted the whirlwind of rehearsals and his growing nervousness about his debut performance. Elise, in turn, shared snippets of her writing, the joy of seeing her stories take shape, and the ache of his absence. One evening, Elise received an unexpected email. It was from a renowned literary agent, expressing his interest in representing her work. A thrill shot through her, followed by a pang of guilt. Sharing this news with Adrian, miles away chasing his own dreams, felt selfish. But Adrian, when she called him later that night, was ecstatic. His voice vibrated with pride, celebrating her success and assuring her that her journey was just as important as his. Their separation, though miles apart, fostered a deeper understanding and appreciation for their individual dreams. They were not just lovers, but each other's greatest source of inspiration, their love story morphing into a beautiful counterpoint within their individual compositions. Months later, an invitation arrived in the mail, Adrian's debut performance with the Vienna Philharmonic. Elise, her heart brimming with a mix of excitement and nervousness, booked a flight to Vienna. The concert hall buzzed with anticipation as Elise took her seat. The lights dimmed, and a hush fell over the audience. Adrian, looking sharp in his tuxedo, appeared on stage, his face etched with a mixture of determination and joy. As the opening notes of A Symphony of Longing resonated through the hall, Elise closed her eyes, letting the music wash over her. It was no longer just a melody. It was a story of their journey, their struggles, and their unwavering love. Tears streamed down her face as the final note faded, the hall erupting in thunderous applause. When the bows subsided, Adrian scanned the audience, his eyes locking with hers across the sea of faces. He smiled, a silent message of love and gratitude. Later that night, backstage, they embraced, 1,000 emotions swirling within them. The distance had only strengthened their bond. Their love a melody that could withstand any separation.
I missed you.
Adrian murmured, his voice husky with emotion.
I missed you too.
Elise whispered back. They stood together, two hearts connected across miles, a testament to the enduring power of love and the beautiful harmony that could be created when two souls wrote their love song together. The future, like a blank sheet of music, stretched before them, filled with the potential for new chapters, new melodies, and a symphony of love that would forever resonate in their hearts.